Hey there. Have you lost a child to an automobile accident? Has your family experienced this tragedy and maybe you're looking for help, resources, tools, how to navigate this season that you never planned on? Well, then you want to join us today as I speak with Melissa Hatcher, the author of Wrecked. She wrote this amazing book/journal about the year after her son's passing. There's some great wisdom and great insights in this book, and we have the privilege to speak with the author herself today to hear a bit more about her story, about why she wrote this book, and why this is a great read for you. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. It's an honor.
Yeah, I love to do two things on this channel. Number one, I love to show people who have found healing after grief and loss, who've learned how to live in a way that they actually enjoy instead of just survive, right? And then I also love to share resources with people who are looking for help and tools. And so we're getting a 2-for-1 today with your book and your story. But for the viewers, why don't we start off with Melissa? Why don't you share about your beautiful son and the story of his passing?
My son's name is Max, and he was 19 years old when he passed. He's my youngest child. I have 3 others. My 2 older boys were grown and gone and had children and married and everything. My daughter was had moved back home and was living with us. But Max was the baby of the family, and we all adored him. He was all our favorite. He was funny and witty, and oh my gosh, he was just everything beautiful in the world. And I miss him so much. I miss that there's like an absence of joy or an absence of music or an absence of laughter in our house where, it used to be filled with Max. And so how Max died was in an accident. It was just a freak accident. He was driving his truck to his brother's house. It was in December during the Advent season, and we were all going to meet at Marcus's house to have our family tradition of lighting the Advent candle. And Megan and Max said, "Oh, we'll meet you guys there." And, they're both like 19, 20 something. So they're basically adult. I mean, they're adults, right? So if the adults don't show up, you think, oh, well, no big deal. But he didn't make it. And when we got home, Megan said, "Oh, Max left hours ago to go to Marcus's house, but I wasn't ready, so I didn't go with him." And so then, we kind of start freaking out a little bit, like, where's Max? Where's Max? And we all had just downloaded on our phones, our family, the Life 360 app. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
And so we were able to get on there, and we found out where Max's phone was. But we still weren't able to reach him or anything. And so my husband said, "Well, I'm going to go where his phone is and see what's going on." And we didn't know, but he had already recognized the address because he worked for the city at that time. And that was on city property. And it was actually like the city wrecking yard. But he didn't tell us that. He told us to stay home and he'll let us know what's going on. But of course, my daughter and I, we have our own ideas. So we jump in the car and we start heading to my son's house in the direction that we thought Max would go, because we're like, oh, his truck probably broke down. But come to find out, long story short, his truck did not break down. He had a freak accident. I mean, he lost control. It was a rainy night. Somehow he lost control. We don't know what happened. We do know that his truck flipped a couple of times, and he sustained horrible brain injuries. And after reading all the medical reports and stuff, I've found that Max died instantly, but we didn't know that because his heart was still beating when they picked him up and took him to the hospital. And they put him, on the machines and things. And when we finally found where he was and went to the hospital, it was hours after the wreck. And when we got there, they were, talking about this injury and this injury and this injury. And I wasn't paying a bit of attention to them. I was paying attention to my son. I was on one side, my daughter was on the other. You know, we were holding his hands. We were babying him like we always do. I thought Max was asleep. I thought Max maybe was in a coma. But his heart was beating. I could hear the machines. I mean, and I had no clue. He was dead. And so we'd been there about an hour maybe. And I started, you know, what the people were saying in the room started filtering into my mind. And I heard them say brain injury, brain dead, no brain activity, and things like that. And I was like, what are you saying? I mean, I hear his heartbeat. You can't tell me he's not alive. And eventually they did say, yes, his heart is still beating. We have him on all the machines and monitors. He is an organ donor. You know, would you like to go ahead and honor that? But at this point, as far as we can detect, there's no brain activity. But in the state of Texas, there has to be a test that they do before they can actually declare that someone is dead. They have to do this specific specialized test. And it was a Sunday night. You know, there was no one at the hospital that was authorized to perform that test. And so we had to wait for someone who was on call to make it there. And they came about, 2:30 in the morning. And so about 2:30 in the morning is when they were able to do the test. And at that point, they said Max was gone. But we think, I know that as soon as Max wrecked on Northside Drive, that Jesus met him there, and he spirit, you know, into heaven. I just think I was blessed to be able to see Max in the hospital looking so beautiful. No blood, no, I couldn't see anything. He was just beautiful, and he was my baby. What we didn't know was underneath the sheet and everything was just broken. His body was broken. But it really was a blessing, and I'm so grateful that I got to see him.
Yeah.
In addition that we didn't see the back of his head, which is where he sustained the head injuries that caused his death.
Right. And Melissa, when was this exactly? What was the date of his passing?
This was December 13th, 2020.
2020.
So it was in the middle of COVID epidemic.
Wow.
There were crazy protocols at the hospital. I mean, they didn't want to let us in because we didn't have masks on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot.
So that was a huge blessing that you got to even see him and be in the room, because I know so many families who lost loved ones and couldn't, you know, that just sort of happened absent of their, like, you know, being able to be there. So that really was a blessing for sure.
Yes, it was.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the aftermath of that, and when and where did you start seeking out help and support for healing, and where did you find the most comfort, maybe in either those initial days or as it moved on into the like 3, 6, kind of 9 month afterwards thing?
Initially, of course, you know, I'm in shock and denial. I don't want to believe that Max is dead. I kept thinking every day that he was just going to walk right in the door and say, "Fix me a sandwich, woman," you know, because he had a fun relationship like that. And I just had so many emotions warring inside of me, and I started to write. And I didn't necessarily write like in a notebook or a journaling thing. I started writing on Facebook. That's how I was coping in the beginning. And then around 3 months, I found a therapist, and I started therapy. So that was really good for me. But I kept writing. I kept writing and writing. And my family was like, "Why are you putting all your business out there on Facebook?" And I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. And I got so many positive comments from friends and other people that were just like, "This is beautiful. You know, you're teaching us, and you're giving us an insight into your heart, and we've never seen grief this intimate before, this before. And so I just kept writing, and around 9 months, I started to look for community. I felt like I didn't have any friends or anyone that I knew really who had lost a child, except for two men who were quite a bit older than me at my church. They lost their sons when their sons were about Max's age, but that's been like, 20 years ago or so. And so these two old guys were like my best friends because I didn't know anyone else to talk to.
Yeah.
So I did start seeking community, and my therapist was trying to help me. And she was like, well, there are retreats and things. And I was like, wait, what? There's like I learned that word, bereaved parents retreat. I've never heard of such. But because of COVID, a lot of things had been shut down.
Wow.
And so I was able to find community, just a few moms on Instagram. And then I found a grieving parents group on Facebook. And so that's how I reached out. But the whole time I kept writing. I've been writing. I mean, it's been 3.5 years. I've been writing ever since. But at the end of the first year, when I thought this is going to be like the first year, it's going to be a miracle. I'm going to heal. Everything's going to be perfect. It's going to be wonderful. And when the first year came and that didn't happen, I was like, basically like, what the fuck? I just couldn't fathom, because I just had this idea. No one told me that. I didn't read it anywhere, but I just had this idea that 1 year is going to be miraculous healing from all of this pain and all of this grief. And it wasn't. And I was so angry. I was angry. I didn't have anyone to blame for Max's accident. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't on drugs. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. Like I said, it just happened. And I had no one to blame. So I blamed the truck. I blamed Northside Drive. I blamed Domino's Pizza for some reason, because we were eating it that night. And I blamed God. And I was so angry. And it was strange for me. Well, not really strange. It wasn't strange at all for me, but for the rest of my family, it was strange that I was so angry and distanced myself from God, because my husband was a pastor. I was employed and still am employed at my church. And Max's death just wrecked me to my core. And I blamed God. I was angry. I screamed, I hate you. How could you do this to us? We've given you our entire lives in ministry. We've brought our children to you and dedicated them to you. We brought them up in the church. They've been baptized. They were at church every Sunday. And this is how you treat us. And of course, irrational thinking, but it was almost like righteous indignation in my mind. And I was so angry. I did not know how to not be angry at God. I prayed, and I talked to my pastor, and I talked to my pastor's wife, and I talked about it in therapy, but I just couldn't let that anger go. And about 2 years, well, it was exactly 2 years and 1 month after Max's death, we had another tragedy happen in our family. It wasn't death, but it was very traumatic, almost as traumatic as Max's death. And at that point, I was just like, okay, I can't do this on my own. God, take it away. Just take that away. I don't blame you anymore. I need you. I need your strength. I need your peace. I need your love. I just need to know that you're there for me, because I can't do this on my own anymore. And that's when it was almost supernatural that the anger just went away from me.
Yeah.
And after that point, I think that's really when I started healing.
Yeah.
And then we were able to go to a bereaved parents retreat that February. So it's like been 2 years and 2 months at that point. And I met all these other beautiful, wonderful people that also had lost a child. And so, I'm saying to myself, how could you think that God just did this to you, and this is all about you, and this is to punish you?
Right.
You are not special. There are hundreds of thousands and millions probably of mothers and families out there who have lost a child. Why do you think that you're special in this one aspect, And so that was very eye-opening for me as well.
Yeah. It's such a trap, right? Because the pain is so immense that we can't really think beyond ourselves. And so we think that we're the only ones and this is only happening to us, and God is somehow like singling us out for this excruciating pain that no one understands, right? Like we can be deceived into all of those things, and they feel so real and valid, right, when we're bound up in the pain. But taking our eyes off of ourselves and seeing, like you said, that there are other people that are going through this, or people have been dealing with death and loss since the beginning of time, and that other people have done it and we'll do it, so all really good insights. I want to ask, like, at what point did you have the idea to take your writings and put them into a book? Like, where was that in your journey?
My therapist is the person who suggested it. I've always been a writer. I've always written poetry, and I've always been much better at communicating through writing than I am like one-on-one. It's just awkward for me. I'm awkward in social situations. But she said, this is really good. And she said, I'm not just saying that to you because, I'm your therapist, but this is really good. And this could help some people. So I want you to think about compiling all of your stuff and maybe writing a book. And I was like, well, the book's practically already written because, I had been journaling on Facebook this whole entire time. And so probably right after the first year, like when I said the miracle healing didn't happen,
Yeah,
I decided maybe I could compile all of this. It's my book is kind of like an anthology, but I didn't call it that. But it is my Facebook posts, some Instagram posts, poems I'd written, private journal entries, and also my therapist and my pastor and his wife allowed me to use all of our text messages because through the year I'd been texting them and asking questions and saying this hurts and blah, 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 and is this normal and am I crazy and all of these things. And so graciously both allowed me to use those. And so I compiled all of that, and I just started on December 13th, and I kind of introduced Max and told what happened. And then I went from there, December, January, February, all the way through the next December. So it's a collection of all of my writings, and then some things that I wrote about to better explain or, to tie it all together to transition into the next whatever. And put it all in a book. And that's it. The first year of my grief journey.
Oh, I love that. And what's your highest hope or intention for the book? Like, what are you hoping? Who do you hope reads this book, and what do you hope that they take away from the book after they read it?
I hope that grieving mothers somehow find this book. I've sent so many copies to ladies that I've met on Facebook, just like, if you want this, I want to give it to you, I mean, it is available on Amazon for purchase, and some people have purchased it, but I really want grieving moms to have this book, because I forgot to say this, but I'm also a voracious reader. So I'm almost finished with your book, by the way. But I started reading right away because I knew nothing about grief. I'd lost my grandmother and I'd lost my father, but those were kind of expected deaths, and they weren't out of order, or, it wasn't like hugely traumatic because we weren't expecting it to happen. And And so I just started reading everything I could get my hands on about grief and Christian perspective on grief and other perspective on grief and everything. And what I was looking for was something to help me with all that anger, especially because I didn't know what to do with it. And I couldn't find anything that was written that was super honest about being angry with God. I mean, I would read like one person's book and it would say, I felt anger toward God, but then blah, 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 and that was it.
Right.
It wasn't even a chapter. It wasn't even a paragraph. It was like a sentence. And so I said, if this can help anybody else just for that reason, to know that anger, it's okay, and that God is big enough to handle it, and that it's not automatically going to send you to hell, for being angry. And also to know, for moms to know that what they're experiencing is normal.
Yeah.
And that's not crazy, because grieving mothers do some things that other people could see as crazy. I know I have. I mean, I've had some like fits. I don't know.
That's so much why I titled my book, You're Not Crazy, You're Grieving, because I feel like I was experiencing and doing and feeling and thinking so many things that nobody, like, you feel like you're losing your mind and nobody had tells you about beforehand. And even like the physicality of it, how sick and tired and, not being able to remember things or focus, like the list goes on, but if you don't know, you can feel a little out there. You can feel like you're losing your marbles. Yeah. So I do think people clearing their experiences so transparently and raw, will hopefully help moms to know that they're not alone. They're not the first person to go through this. And my favorite part about the whole thing is that they can see you further down the road, having learned now how to live in this place and not despise every day, right? To have a measure of healing and hope and joy in your life. Certainly Max is not there physically, and that is felt for sure, but that you're not bound by grief, right? That it's not debilitating and, interfering with your present and your future. And that's the part that people need to see too, because nobody talks about that. And I think as parents, especially moms, we can feel guilty for saying we feel okay, or saying we are happy, or we have joy. We somehow feel like that's wrong, or that we're bad moms, or we don't love our kids, or we don't miss our kids if we're okay, and it's like, so I want, Megan Devine has a whole, like, it's okay that you're not okay. And my thing is, it's okay that you're okay. Like, it's okay to get to the place where you're okay. And that doesn't mean that you don't love your child or miss your child, but you can be okay, and you can learn how to have increasing happiness and joy return to your life. This doesn't have to be a forever sentence of sadness and sorrow and all that kind of stuff. So I love that. I do want to give you an opportunity to read an excerpt of wherever, or a little poem, or if you want to read the bit about the back, but I want to give the viewers a small little taste of the book. And then, like we said, we'll certainly share the link below. I just got mine the other day, so I haven't had a chance yet to dive into it. Looking forward to it.
Oh, I know what I want to read.
Okay.
Let me find it. But while I'm looking for it, I wanted to say that it's so ironic that you're saying all that about healing, because just yesterday I had an appointment at my psychiatrist's office, and I, every time you come in, I don't know if you know, but they give you a clipboard and a pencil and tell you to fill out this depression form or whatever. Yeah. And I got the lowest score that I've gotten in 3.5 years on that. And I was like, yes. And even on the one question that they said about sadness, I've always gotten a 3 on that, because it's like 0, I'm never sad or hardly ever sad. 1, I am sad sometimes. 2, I am sad more than half the time. 3, I am almost always sad. I've been checking 3 for 3.5 years. And yesterday I checked 1.
Love it.
Like, immediately felt guilty because I felt like, oh, I should be sadder. But then I thought, no, that's healing.
Yes. And
That's
see, that's the message that we can't over communicate that enough, that like, it's okay. It's not wrong to be okay. It's not wrong to be happy. It's not wrong to have peace. Like, that's what God made available to us. That's what our kids would want for us. But somehow in our culture has been woven in this message, in this thought that you're never going to be happy again. You're always going to be broken. You're always going to be sad. And if you're not, it means that you know, you don't miss your kid or you don't love your kids. So I thank you for sharing that, because people need to hear that. There's zero shame or condemnation if you are sad or struggling, but also can there be zero shame or condemnation if you're not struggling, right? Like, why do we want to judge either one side of that coin, you know?
I really like, oh gosh, I can't think of her name. She's like a professor at Duke Divinity School, and she's lovely, and she writes lots of books, but the one book, Kate Ballard, that's her name, Kate Bowler Ballard. One of her books is called Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day. And I was just thinking yesterday, you know, that was a good day. And you know, maybe I'm not as sad as I used to be before, but I do still have sad days. I do still feel broken, but just the juxtaposition of being able to recognize that you can be broken and you can have beauty. You can be grieving and you can find joy. You can be longing and you can still love. You know, just those, I think that's like one of the biggest realizations for me in healing, was that joy and grief can live side by side. They can both live in your body.
Yeah.
I didn't want to admit that. I like you said, I thought I wanted to be sad and be morose for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Okay, this is just one of my favorite parts. It is called A Note for Friends of Grieving Parents Regarding Funeral Flowers, Food, and Platitudes. I'm going to read about the funeral flowers. Please, no matter what the florist suggests, do not send the spray of carnations or lilies or roses or mums, for that matter, the ones that are on a 3-legged metal stand. Those are funeral flowers. You don't see them at parties, baby showers, graduations, etc. They are specifically used at funerals. And although lovely, plants require care. My son just died. I couldn't keep him alive. I'm barely keeping myself alive. And you give me a plant to raise? Please, no. After Max's memorial service, all the plants and flowers were taken from the church to our house. There they stood on their 3 legs, looking innocent and pretty, smelling sweet. People came and went, walked around, sat around, talked around, and ate around the funeral flowers. And all the while, those flowers taunted me with their fake life and cloying perfume. Finally, when the traffic of family, friends, and well-wishers died down, when it was just me alone in the house with the funeral flowers, I opened the front door and threw every one of those bitches out onto the sidewalk. Then I went outside, bellowed, and proceeded to stomp them into the cement. Wet foam, floral tape, wires, metal stands, plastic containers, ceramic containers, leaves, petals, blooms, and my tears formed a puddle in the middle of the yard. I took a few stems that survived and tossed them for Max's dog to fetch. And then, like, nothing to see here, I went back into the house. Maybe it was childish, disrespectful, or a loony act, but for the first time since my son died, I felt. However brief the moment, I felt something, not just the nothingness that had settled in my middle. I did not toss the plants, but they eventually died.
I love that. If I could change, I mean, I want to change so much about how we handle death, but the flowers is one of the things. Like, why do you give something to somebody that's going to die in a week or two? Like, they give the flower bouquets and they're going to die. So, like, you're dealing with death and then you're surrounded by things that are about to die. Like, it is I don't know who came up with that tradition. It makes zero sense to me. And I hope that we can single-handedly change that tradition because it's just awful.
And funeral flowers.
And funeral flowers. Like, give the family something they can use. Give them something that'll be helpful to them. Don't fill their house with flowers that are about to die. So good. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing just a little snippet of your story. We absolutely will share this book. We'll share the link below in the description, and we encourage you to get it. If you're watching this video and you know somebody that recently lost their child, I would encourage you to get this for them. You know, those are the types of gifts that are helpful. Give them something that they can read or listen to, or, you know, to minister to them and counsel them, because you may not know what they're going through, but we do, right? And she's provided this book for them. So, Melissa, any last, if someone's watching this and let's say they're in the first 3 months of losing a child, what would be your biggest piece of advice to them?
It's going to sound very selfish, but I would say if you can get your hands on this book, to read it, because it is the only book I've seen that is happening in the moment, and that it's raw and it's uncensored and it's not edited. I mean, it was just the way I was feeling in the moment after I lost my son, and I shared all of that. I mean, the piece that I read was kind of, you know, a little bit funny, but the rest of it, it's not a bow book, which means, my therapist made that up, it's not a bow book. It's not wrapped up at the end. At the end of the year, you know, it wasn't wrapped up pretty with a bow on top. I mean, I was still grieving. I was still angry. And other than that, I would say find community, find someone to support you and help you, whether it is your pastor, a therapist, reading, or even say like joining, like I did, mother's group on Facebook. Once you find out that you are not alone, you start to feel so much better, not about the death of your child, but just so much better about yourself. Yeah. Like your book says, you are not crazy. You're crazy. Yeah. And I think that's really important for mothers to find out very early on. Otherwise, you know, it's going to damage them. Yeah. Such good stuff. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing. We hope that this video was an encouragement to you. Hopefully that it sparked a little bit of hope that you're not alone, that you can find healing and recovery. Again, we'll list the book below, but if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and check out for other helpful tools for grief recovery. As always, we are here to cheer you on every step of the way. Until next time, guys, we will see ya. Bye.